Hey guys, what's going on? This is our Thursday market breakdown. We are coming to the end of the week, so a few pairs are shaping up. I do sound a little bit off. I've got a bit of a sore throat and my ears are a bit popping, but we can still jump into this. So looking at the DXY, we can basically see that we do still have that bullish momentum, which we knew was always a possibility. We were looking for somewhat of a corrective move lower, but we always knew that this is a possibility for price to just continue moving in an uptrend. So looking at price now, it's no surprise that we're seeing this sort of price moving like this. So I would still just stay on my A game with this. I wouldn't be looking for any sort of 1, 2, 3 in this area for sure, but more so just evaluate price. It can still have some sort of drop, but at this point in time it does look like we are gravitating to that override zone, so I would really have more so my eyes attached on that and be aware that US related pairs could be going bullish. Even though we were looking for the short, the bull could be on the table. So that's basically it, plain and simple for the DXY. Just keep that in mind. No real need to really drill lower at this point. There is this sort of mini inflection point that I would keep in mind, that we could tap into this, come down, and then create something somewhat larger in this area. And then the next thing is we've basically tapped into this, we come down, and then we go up, and then this becomes the gameplay where we can then start saying, sure, there's a possibility that we could be getting some sort of pattern or something in that way to this reach. But once again, it's not the sort of pattern I would be entertaining. I would more so just be eyeing up with how price gets there, similar to this sort of price action we saw over here, where price kind of just scooped, tapped into it again, and went. Are we going to see something similar to this over here? And it just becomes 1, 2, and then come approach this zone here, and then we evaluate how price is there. So that's basically how I'm looking at the DXY. This can still just trickle and continue going up very slowly or impulsively. At this point in time, it doesn't really matter, as long as we know that this is definitely a high probability that we're going to be coming to this point. However, I don't think if we are going to be selling off, it's not likely we'll be reaching this point or this point for now. But if we do start to move down aggressively, then we can look at those zones. But I think more so we are moving in aggression to the upside. Jumping into the next one on my watch list, which is USD CAD. Now, USD CAD, I know previously we did get this nice little rejection here. Unfortunately, given the circumstance, it just wasn't enough for it to commit. It happens on a different day that could commit and actually be a very, very nice trade. Remember, we are trading down here in structure as well, so it has all the right to get a little bit more complicated. This can get a little bit more messy. However, looking at price right now, I think there's more than enough for price to just kind of correct a little bit before we go down. We can just scoop up and tap into one of these areas before we go, or this could be the continuation here, which I'm eyeing up now. So even though we're seeing a bit of bullish momentum on the DXY, this definitely could be a good possibility for a short play, but it's not one that I'm going to entertain because we're still kind of engulfed in this sort of price area. I think more so, once we actually start getting some commitment to the downside and we drop off a little bit more aggressively, and maybe we commit something like that, that could be interesting. But then even at that point there's always a possibility with something like this, where we correctively basically move to this point, we come in, and then we tap in here, and then we sell off. So there's a few variations of what I would be extra aware of, even if we are positioning ourselves in this area. Just understand that this is always a possibility, and then with this aggressively moving up, we can always just extend, and it becomes a little bit more complicated. So it's not ideally my most favorited price action. However, understanding that there's some good possibilities on the table for this at the moment, I wouldn't really be too fixated on this pair, to be honest. There's a few other better pairs on the table, but definitely there could be room for this to just aggressively move low, and then maybe possibly we see some sort of similar price action on the DXY, but something significant would really have to change in the economy. And we do have some high impact news coming up in the future, which could be a catalyst to give it some volatility. But at this moment in time, it's not something that I'm fixated on. Looking at Euro New Zealand dollar, which is the next one, I think Euro New Zealand dollar is phenomenal. It's nice that we've tapped into this inflection point that we eyed up. We had our alert set. We kind of just pushed above, tapped into it, and now we've aggressively moved off. it was looking a bit, corrective, but we did kind of have this reversal pattern at the very top. Not the easiest for people to kind of read between. I think, I don't think the pair did us any justice in terms of this very messy structure, but we have to understand that at the end of the day, there was more than enough for us to actually read between the lines. And I think, with the 1, 2, 3, 4 tests to this high, and then the rejection, I think even at that point there, it was a little bit difficult to say, do I want to take the short? I think right now where we are in structure, these are better areas. Even if we're seeing these tight flags here, this for sure still can be a very, very good trade. I would personally want to opt in for something a little bit larger, but we have to understand that where we are in the move, we can aggressively move down here to down here. So it doesn't really have to create anything larger at this point in time. These sort of 1 hour flags over here, I think, are more than enough at this point. Just you need to be on you need to be sharp and on your A game with these, because they could shape up to be very nice, or they can just be a bit tricky as well to get involved in. So just be on your A game. But as we can see over here, we could get something like this, and the next thing we're moving down to the next point and so forth. So like I said, I would look for something a little bit larger personally. I would look for something like that. The likelihood of something like that playing out isn't very high, but at this point in time, this is the sort of entry that I would be looking for to mitigate any extra risk. So that kind of gives me a little bit more confidence with my entry. But like I said, that's the sort of trade I would look for personally. However, the smaller flags can still be very profitable as well. And moving on to the next one, which is Aussie New Zealand dollar. Absolutely love this pair. It's just a shame that I was tagged out right at the top as well. It is what it is, a lesson learned. Just need to basically be extra patient until we kind of run significant, but I'm happy I took a break even and not lost at that point. What I do like is that even though now we've broken this trend, we're trading in here. This isn't the sort of price area where I want to be just getting involved in this, even though that this can commit and this can potentially be a very nice trade. I personally like Euro New Zealand dollar, would like to see something a little bit larger before I take any commitment to the downside, because I would be looking for price to potentially break through this and then be going back onto the higher time frame and seeing price potentially fill this area here. So starting this catalyst of a larger move, that's a possibility that I will be eyeing up. It's a trade that I would much rather prefer to be involved in, even if it was a little bit smaller. As long as it was just clear on the 4 hour and the hourly. More so the 4 hour, I could really make it out. I'll be much happy to get involved in a position like this. So like I said, patience is key. I'll be more than happy to wait, but this is still very good. We've broken all of this. We're moving to this override. We could potentially push low before we kind of push up and go down, and then even at that point there, we could create something like this, where price essentially just sells off, taps into this, comes up, corrects, and then we see some sort of price action like this. There's so many possibilities of what could happen. It's just a little bit too exciting at this point. So I think for that reason, I'm just going to be patient with this and leave it. But moving on to the yen pairs, these ones I think are looking absolutely nice. Let's look at Aussie yen. Aussie yen I think is one that is definitely got so much potential at this moment in time. So as we were looking for this flag, as I said yesterday, this is a phenomenal entry. We even got that extra little push out, taking people out. I think this is phenomenal in terms of getting positioned in the market right now. Even with a low amount of risk, you can really protect yourself. I think something like this is absolutely stunning, honestly. We have a nice significant push. We've broken out of this sort of trend here. We're now creating this sort of flag over here, and all we need to really be doing is either getting involved here, mitigating risk, or waiting for the final push down, and then we could be potentially looking to get long. If we do look at a position from, let's say, current price action, which is a little bit premature, but you could always be looking at the reduced risk as well. Even so, you could take that and protecting yourself. Let's say you even protect yourself with 18 pips. I wouldn't say that's completely necessary, but you can trade with the 18 pips for protection, just for that extra bit of protection. And then even so, this can turn into a monster of a trade. So the first inflection point you have roughly around about 7, and then you have, to the 1, 2, 3, which most probably would gravitate further, could be around about a 20% position. So that's also very, very stunning in terms of, the potential we have on this pair, and it makes so much sense in line with everything that's going on. So I just want you to keep that in mind, that obviously, even though, we are correcting in this sequence, we're actually creating something here which could be very significant for the upside. But even if you miss this trade and it starts to commit to the upside, then we can at least look for another entry to go further, but it might just be a little bit later. But this can get very impulsive and messy, and I will be sort of looking for price action in this sort of similar nature, where we see something like this. And I think that could be very, very likely, where, price just gives it that sort of aggressive push. But don't worry, because this is on the 4 hour. If we get a bit granular and analyze sort of price here, we can see that, price sort of aggressively moved, but there was entries there. Perhaps maybe we'd be looking for more tighter flags at that point. But like I said, this is a phenomenal area to be entering in the market. Just to understand that it does come with a little bit of risk. The little bit of risk that would be is that we do still gravitate a little bit lower. Tap into this, and then we do something like that before we go. I don't think that's the highest of probabilities, but that is also a possibility, where we have a final ending structure over here leading into the trend line, and then at that point there we kind of push further, and this becomes a little bit more parallel, where that is always a possibility to be aware of. So like I said, you can wait for the push away, or you can be looking to get involved in this area. I still think that this will be a phenomenal area to be entering in the market, but I understand that it does come with a little bit of risk, and we are trading towards the end of the week, so just keep that in mind. Moving on to the next pair, which is GBP Yen. I think GBP Yen is absolutely stunning. I think the fact that we actually completed this structure is great. We had that furthermore extension, which took a day or two to kind of just really shape up, and then we got a little bit of a commitment to the downside, push back into this pattern, and now we're actually trading at the trend line. As we're trading at this trend line, we correctively squeezed. So we created this first flag, which I think was definitely, looking very nice at this point here, where we basically traded at the bottom of this. And you can see that within here, there was somewhat of structure. And we were just waiting for this to really just shape up. And then as it developed further, it just got a little bit more messy, but at the same time, perhaps maybe you could call it a mistrade, because it didn't really come up there. But that's not a problem at all, because what we really need to be looking at now, and there was the reduced risk, is the one that I personally would have taken, and I was eyeing it up, I just wasn't able to take it just because I was out. Is that's the trade there, where you would have mitigated your risk from that, and roughly putting around about a 40 pip stop loss, and you'd basically be in the trade here. That's basically what I would have looked at. But then now looking at price, we have something even nicer. It's probably ready to go now, so I wouldn't be waiting for too much. I would just understand that this can just commit and go. We basically had this tap into here, and we pushed up, and this can just basically go. So essentially I would be looking at sort of this sort of opening sort of flag here, but just understand that if this does happen to push back up here, then that's going to be a phenomenal area to be entering back into the market. So keep that in mind. But this 2-touch sort of scoop, call it a 1, 2, 3, that's more than enough for it to go now. So this is going to be a really nice run in terms of the grand scheme of things. I think we could see some very nice impulsive action. The sort of price action I would be looking for is something quite similar to this, where we can kind of just, aggressively just kind of move now, and then start creating something larger down here. But we'll have to wait and see how this moves. It can get somewhat corrective. We could see similar price action to what we've seen previously, where, price does get somewhat corrective before we drop off. So like I said, there's a few possibilities and variations on the table, but we know that in terms of market direction, it is shaping up for the short, and it's a very nice way to position to actually be looking at to get short, sorry, apologies. In terms of a reduced risk entry, we are in reduced risk entry territory, so you can be mitigating risk with roughly around about a 55 pip stop loss. And even with that risk reward, it's still very, very nice, because to the low of this 90% rule, you could be looking at roughly around about 12% on the portfolio. And then if you're holding this a little bit longer term, which you would have to mind you would be incurring some swaps and so forth. You could be looking at a 24% position to the absolute, but the probability of us actually getting here anytime soon is very low. It could be very, very slow, could be very corrective. We don't really know the nature of price at this point. We just know that it's possible and very probable that we could get some aggressive push away. So I think positioning yourself strategically is more in favor in areas like here, reduced within here. Over here, not so much, because there wasn't really much of a clear entry. You know, this would be somewhat premature because this holds a lot of risk, but of course it did play out to be valid. But at what risk? You'd be running around about 1.6%, where if you took a position over here, which I think was more than enough, you know, you could have easily squeezed in around about 11 pips. You'd be running roughly around about 3%, but with a lot more potential for it to run to be a lot of a better position. You know, even to this low alone is 60% on your portfolio. So like I said, GBP yen is a stunning pair, as you've seen in this weekly breakdown and the ones before. We've been talking about this almost every day for the past few weeks now. It's going to be great, honestly, so keep a key eye on this one, because honestly it's going to be absolutely stunning. The next one I'm going to be looking at is CAD yen. CAD yen is looking absolutely messy, I'll be honest with you. It's not really one that I'm going to be really fixed on entertaining. Still need some time for development. Like I said, I'll either wait for the push down and a flag from here, or for us to make our way back to the high and then kind of break that and push back down. So like I said, it's not really my sort of ideal price action. You know, now that we've correctively moved, there's a few possibilities on the table of, you know, are we going to create something like this where we somewhat come up, correctively move, and then come back up, and then we create an ending structure. You know, we don't really know at this point what's going to really happen with this pair, so we have to kind of just trade with what we see, wait for a signal from the market. Too corrective at the moment for me personally. However, if you did look, I know some people are looking at this short, and what they are looking at is still some level of valid. It's just not in my sort of interest to be taking a trade. Is, you know, sort of we see a solid push down from this double top, and now as we've come down here, we kind of created this, and then we came down, and are we coming back up to push down? And then this becomes the sort of corrective sort of flag area for the short, and then we take that. But once again, that's a bit too large. It's bigger than the push down. It's just, there's so many negative confluences for me at the moment on this pair. It's just one I'm going to personally leave until we have something significant from the market. So moving forward from here, I'll be moving on to my wildcards, which is New Zealand yen. New Zealand yen is, like I said, it's very corrective. You know, it is in no way is it too corrective. In no way is it something I wouldn't want to really get involved in. You know, personally, I think, and we did establish there was a good entry over here. You know, this can really make its way and run much further. We could have a very impulsive day, but I think just given this very corrective price action, we hold the risk of price just kind of having one little drop off before we go. And I think that becomes a little bit more probable as we correct. So kind of looking at that now, I don't really know if I want to be sitting in this sort of price action. Personally, I think personally I might just opt out to just not be involved in this at all. Like I said, it just depends on what happens with price, but I think given how price is now, it's just not something I want to be getting involved in. I'll wait for price to really get up here before I even look for any sort of position. I think the long position is just kind of a bit done for me, but just bear in mind that we can have a very impulsive move up before we come down. But typical for this pair, we could just literally sell off and just drop off from here as well. So it becomes more and more neutral as time goes on now. So that's basically it for New Zealand yen. The next one is USD yen. USD yen is also still one of my favorited pairs. I think it still has a lot of time for development. The DXY hasn't been so clear as well, so I think for that reason I'm not sure. Like I am hoping to see some sort of future forecast of something like this where we get a lot more development. It does mean that obviously this will take some time. We could be leading up until May, so forth, or even sooner, or later. But more so, we're kind of moving through override to override now. So I'm just kind of looking at these these high points and just want to see how price really approaches them. This isn't the typical price action now that I'm going to be looking for a short, but if we do kind of get a solid push up and a push back down, then I could be looking to get potentially entertaining this. But at this moment in time, it's just one that I'm just going to leave aside. Don't need to really entertain it because there's nothing that really jumps out to me. It's on the high time frame, so there's no reason for me to go lower on it. USD Swiss, I think USD Swiss once again is going to be very, very nice. We just need to kind of wait until we get this scoop. I do really like how we've sort of slowly made our way to this. I'm curious to find out now that if we're going to be able to, you know, literally just tap into that pushback down, create a flag and go, or is it just going to carry on with the other US related pairs and just get very corrective and messy? But it is looking quite nice, honestly. I think there's so much potential for this pair right now. We shouldn't really just cross it off the board. I think just, yeah, be hella patient with this, because honestly I think USD Swiss could be the go-to trade out of a lot of these instruments. New Zealand CAD, you know, I think I said this before as well, it's not really one I'm really looking to entertain. We did get this sort of breakaway now, but not in the sort of form of price that I wanted. Just a very corrective break, and I think this is just going to become a little bit larger, and I think this is just becoming a very corrective middle section. Not your typical sort of angle, but very corrective middle section to get that catalyst to have one more drop off, and then from there we could be looking to go long. So I think this could be one to really wait for. Would I be looking for the short? Probably not, to be honest. It's not one that I think I'm very experienced with taking something like that, but for sure there's that possibility. It could get a lot more messier. There's so many probabilities. If this starts going up, I wouldn't be too surprised because we are moving from here, but just the way that we're moving up isn't the most progressive price action for me. So for that reason, I think, you know, there's that strong possibility that we can still pull back for one more push down. Next one is Euro Aussie. Now, Euro Aussie, absolutely love it. I think it's so stunning. There's so much potential on this. I think similar to Aussie New Zealand, what was it? I think it was it was one of these pairs, I can't remember now, but we are coming down into basically tapping into sort of an inflection point zone. So we have to keep an eye on this, because this has a possibility of, you know, maybe even creating something like this, or more so like this, where we could just tap into this, and then next thing you know, we're up here somewhere, and then, you know, we're just creating some sort of correct sort of price. I mean, at this moment in time, it doesn't really matter. I don't think looking for the long position is the better trade. I think being extra patient and waiting for the short position is the prime entry. I think be smart about where you want to be positioning yourself, because I think if you're going to position yourself and you're going to go short, the short play is up here, you know, with that override 2, and it kind of leads in with this higher time frame structure. Understand that it comes with a bit of risk as well. You know, I mean, that's not really our typical angle. I think this is more so nice. You know, we get that push. It makes sense for it to correct and move lower so that we can have more of a run to the high, and then we end up somewhere up here before we sell off. So I think it needs a lot more time. You know, this could be easily a March, end of February trade, most likely March, but we'll have to wait and see. Could we see impulsive movement to the upside? Yeah, absolutely. There could be very, very strong impulsive movement. Something quite similar to this, which might take 3 days, 3-4 days. We could see something similar to that, where we basically just kind of move up like this, maybe a little bit more so like that, and we kind of push up, catch people out on the wrong side, which we're seeing with GBP yen, and then we start dropping off. So like I said, it requires a lot more patience, but just simply setting an alert is going to just let you know where you need to be by the charts. So that's basically it for my watch list this week. It wasn't really a very energetic one, but I hope it was very informative. That's basically what I'm be looking at for this week. I don't really have anything majorly on watch today. I think if there was anything that I would be taking advantage of, it would have been GBP yen. I mean, there's always the question, like, is it too late? Well, I could have taken a reduced risk entry. I just chose not to. The entry I would have taken was here, but it's now moved away. But for me, I'm not really bothered about it. You know, it's about long-term growth and you know, your development over time. So like I said, don't worry about these trades so much. There'll be so much more abundance of opportunity in the future as well. It's just this, it's great to be understanding what's happening with these pairs so you can position yourself correctly when the time is right. So have a great day, guys. Catch you in the next video. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you did enjoy this video. Drop a comment below if you have any questions.